guide the city's efforts to invest and try to do fundraising, in addition to what the city is going to invest in the cemetery infrastructure like roads, retaining walls, things like that, but also create a Friends of the Salt Lake City Cemetery group that will help try to raise money and to do public-private partnerships to try to help with the long-term maintenance of the cemetery. It is scheduled to be full in the next, in less than 10 years, I think, between 5 and 10 years. And so once that happens, obviously we're going to have to find a way to, right now the only income the cemetery gets aside from parks money is the cost of burial plots and the cost of opening burial plots and things like that. So we have to find a way to sustain that as a public asset and as a really important historic place and green space in our district, and find a way to preserve that going forward. Does anybody have any questions about anything?
Any estimate on how long it's going to take for the tree cleanup?
I'm not sure. I just know that it's proven to be a lot.
It's a huge job.
It's a huge undertaking, yeah. And even though our crews are working almost for the first couple of days, we're working around the clock on it. You can see there are still a lot of felled trees in the cemetery and at Liberty Park. And I don't have a date on when we can estimate those will be cleared.
If you could keep us up to date, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, I really hope that it will be completed by our next meeting. So, but I'll keep you updated between
Thank
now.
you. Yeah, just in case.
Yep.
Anything else for Chris?
No, I don't think so, unless there are questions.
Yeah.
Chris, this is Minta. Brandon,
Yes.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you and the people that work with you, Ava at the mayor's office, all of you that come to my aid for a neighbor of mine about the Google and the damages to his water line and all. And if you all came together in one day, I've never had that many phone calls, unless of course with my kids. So I really appreciate that you really outdone yourself in showing me that you're doing good in your job. I want to thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Happy that we could help, and please let me know if anything else comes up where we need to do more follow-up.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move along to Detective Givick from the Salt Lake City Police Department.
Hello, everyone. I'll get right to it. Victory Road looks pretty bad again. I've been getting a lot of phone calls and emails and complaints about Victory Road. Most of you know what that's about. I've sent traffic or parking enforcement up there to see if they can get rid of some of the motorhomes that are parked up there, which is a new thing for us that I'm seeing, at least for our side of town. As far as the cleanups that we've done a couple of years before, the health department is looking to prioritize a cleanup up there. It's going to be a huge undertaking, and they're just going to have to get organized and schedule that cleanup up there. As far as the police department's part, it always changes, but as of right now, I've been told that the police department will only do what's called a standby assist for safety reasons. It seems like a lot of people are focusing on us when it comes to these cleanups, but we really, all we're there for is not to do anything other than just make sure that they go safely and protect the people who are doing them, and that's it. We don't necessarily plan them. We don't get much involvement. We don't take anything from anybody. It's just a standby assist, and we make sure that nobody gets hurt and that rules are being followed as far as, just treating everybody humanely and decently. So that's really our involvement. They told me that you might see some changes up there in the fall. Again, it's going to be a huge undertaking like it was a couple of years ago, and the only involvement the police ever have in those really lately is just keeping everybody safe. So there's that. Still, my top complaints, as they've always been, is why don't I see more officers in my neighborhood, and why does it take so long for them to respond when I call? and I don't have an answer to that. So there, I'm just telling you they're my two top complaints. As far as traffic enforcement in neighborhoods throughout the city right now, I was told a while ago, but I was told again today, I think, yeah, today, that motorists are not really doing any traffic enforcement in the city right now because everyone's stretched so thin. So there's no traffic enforcement. To my knowledge, I've asked around. So there's that. I've also sent an email to UHP up at the Capitol because Capitol Hill employees like to cut through your neighborhood over there when they go to avoid rush hour traffic, when they go to work and when they go home. And I think that's causing a lot of speeding and a lot of stop sign violations and a lot of congestion that shouldn't be really happening in a residential area like yourselves. So I've asked them to send out a Capitol Hill-wide email to ask people not to use those streets. I've received no answer from the Capitol Hill people or from UHP at all. It has worked in the Federal Heights area before when I've sent out those emails and they have advised their employees, please stop using the Federal Heights area to avoid rush hour traffic. It did a lot of good. I've heard nothing back from the Capitol yet. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, well, thank you, Detective Givick. Let's now hear from Ava Lopez, who's our liaison with the mayor's office.
Hey, thank you everyone for coming. I know Chris talked a lot, Councilmember Wharton spoke on some of these issues, but I wanted to go ahead and update us. I'm gonna share the link first for the new flag design dates. The first update I wanted to give, because of our, the dates kind of conflicting with the windstorm that we faced, the dates have been pushed back. So now we will have our council briefing for the flag, for the final flag design will be on September 29th, and then the flag will be adopted officially on October 6th. So you can take a look at that if you're still interested in the flag design dates. I wanted to talk about more about what we are doing as far as handling homelessness. We've come out with a new plan as an administration, and there's a phase 1 and a phase 2 plan. And thank you, Detective Givick, for kind of touching on that subject and explaining the involvement of Salt Lake City PD. This is in collaboration with the county. So Salt Lake City uses the county health department to deploy resources to be able to abate encampments that are entrenched, like the ones we see on Victory Road. Specifically, some identified areas are Topher Park, St. Mark's Cathedral area, the core of downtown North Temple, Ballpark neighborhood, the Granary District, and it goes on. This is kind of the first priority because this is where we see the most of the entrenchments at this moment. Anytime I get a call or somebody calls the council office, we communicate and bring that to Michelle Hoon's office, Michelle is in charge of making these plans, advising on them, communicating with the county health department. So that's how these identified areas are prioritized. But the goal of phase 1 is to, of course, compassionately bring these social services again with us to these abatements to try to get people that are experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity resources so that they're able to get the solutions or get the resources that they need to be able to move into a situation where they're not so housing insecure. Again, there is police presence to keep safety there, and any abandoned materials or belongings that were abandoned are then abated, and that's a way to keep these areas, and they're shared spaces, a lot of them, to keep them safe and sanitary. Phase 2 of this plan is really quite unique. Phase 1 being a 12-week process. Phase 2 is where we bring in enforcement, and it's not to criminalize or to enforce people that are experiencing homelessness, but rather to, again, remember that shared space to keep it clean and accessible to everyone. What we're seeing in a lot of these communities are neighbors saying that they no longer feel safe walking on sidewalks. Sure, most of us have experienced it where we know there's certain areas of a park that we can't walk into. And so the point of this is to break up entrenched encampments and to create these safe walkable places again. So this phase 1 began on September 14th. 12 weeks from now, phase 2 will continue, and we imagine phase 2 will be very similar to the efforts that we saw in 500 South, where we had lots of resources, social services come through, then abatements after signage was posted, and then we had police presence and enforcement officers to come through and dedicate time and resources to keeping those areas and preventing from other encampments from growing. If anybody's interested on this, or if they're interested, I've had a lot of questions from community members calling and saying how they can get involved. And Randy, I don't think she's on the call, but Randy from Capitol Hill called, and we had a great conversation where she wanted to see if we could get a neighborhood watch program started up. And so that's something that I've been exploring, to look at what resources can we dedicate. You know, we are limited right now for the fiscal year, but what other trainings exist? How can we empower the neighborhood to help a community member that's housing insecure? There's lots of community members, I think, that want to be a part of the solution. So if you're interested in talking more, you have more questions, or maybe there's confusion on a certain process, I'd love to talk more about it with you. Just a reminder again, we are in COVID phase yellow, so we haven't seen spiking happening again in Salt Lake City. In fact, we are declining. The rest of the state is where we're seeing the spiking happening again. And I actually just got the statistic from Ron Lund at Salt Lake County Health Department in the last meeting I had with Downtown Community Council. And he said here in Salt Lake City, about 90% of citizens are wearing masks. We're seeing about 90% transfer. That's very high. And I think it's the highest in the state so far. So seriously, keep up the good job. This is very healthy. This is very safe. So this is kind of the new normal, if you will, that we keep hearing. And you should be very proud that Salt Lake City is following that. Tree updates. All of us are devastated. I want to share that I personally, I know Councilmember Wharton, everybody at the city is so devastated by the loss of our trees. So the city has calculated we've lost about 1,000, or if not more, city trees. And then we determined that about the same amount, 1,000 or more, of private trees. It's something that's really sad. A lot of these trees were very old, aged, have seen the city through flourishing times. And I hope that this can instill some hope in each of you, that we still have the mayor's initiative to plant 1,000 trees on the west side. In fact, coming up in October, I believe it's October 10th, we'll be planting 200 more trees on the west side. It only shows how important our urban forestry department is, how vital trees are to communities, to neighborhoods, to creating safe spaces. It's something that we all enjoy. And we are asking, our urban forestry department has asked that each community council ask your own residents and community members if there's any interest in kind of chairing and coming up with an urban forestry subcommittee, where the city would go in and provide resources and tools and knowledge for those individuals that want to properly care for trees. This would be learning how to properly water your tree, how to talk to your neighbor about taking care of public trees that we find, pruning them, making sure that we report them if they're getting sick or ill. This is what it takes to grow these trees, and we want to prolong the lifespan of them. I'll share that here, that way we have more information on it. But if anyone's interested, please reach out. I'd love to get that set up for this community. I think that we've seen on the map, most of the tree space, the green space that we see for trees, is on the west side of our community. And we want to be able to create that more. This week, the airport opened. It right now, it has the largest Delta hub currently in the world until LA Delta opens up next year, I believe is when they're on track to open up. So it's something that's really unique, as well as the Sky Lounge is the 4th largest in the world. And if you didn't know already, Delta considers Salt Lake City a major hub to connect into Los Angeles and Seattle in the Western coast. So it's really critical for them. It's super important for us. And the best part about the airport is that we didn't use city taxes to create it. It's been on budget, on time, and it's so beautiful. So please book a vacation, go inside of it. If anybody wants a tour, I'm sure we can request that, but it is something that we should all be proud of to have here in the capital city. Reminder again, boards and commissions are still open. We're still seeing vacancies. I had people in the last meeting reach out and we shared that information with them. We've got the application updated. Please let me know. We want more participants from our West Side communities to participate on those boards and commissions. We have all of them for any topic related in the city. And if you specialize in an area, we'd love to have you to serve on our committees. Other than that, I'll take any questions. And I hope to see you on JamFest. I'm really excited for that. So glad I'm older than 21.
Thank you, Ava. In the interest of time, if you have any questions for Ava, please put them in the chat box and she can reply to them there. We have our state legislator with us, Jen Daly Provo. Jen?
Hey, I'll defer to Catherine because I know she's got a tighter schedule than I do. So we'll let Catherine go after. Thanks.
That's great.
Thanks, Jen. I'll probably go back to a meeting at West that I left, but that was very nice of you, Jen. Thanks. I am happy to report that our schools have started after a rough week where we hoped to start but couldn't because our first day of school was the same day as the windstorm, which seemed like an incredible coincidence to us. We also had the week that we went first to online school, or when we stopped school, you may remember that Wednesday was the earthquake. So we stopped school and then we had the earthquake that Wednesday. And then the first day of school was the windstorm. And in some ways, those were both lucky coincidences because it would have been bad in both situations for kids to be traveling to school or kids to be in school. So in some ways we felt very fortunate that there weren't kids walking into West High School when that tree tipped over. I'm sure you all saw that tree that tipped over in front of West High. So in some ways we felt very, very lucky that we didn't have kids at West High during the earthquake, or because there were things that were breaking and snapping, or at West High when that tree was coming down. So we are grateful for our students' safety in those situations. We did have to cancel school for 2 days, and then we canceled it again for another 2 days. We did cancel it at the last minute, which made some parents very angry the second set of times on Thursday. Mayor Mendenhall was kind enough to have a conference with Superintendent Madden on that Thursday to talk about the problems in the city. We canceled it at the last minute, not because our schools were down, but really because we didn't know how many of our parents and families didn't have energy and didn't have internet. We weren't aware of the magnitude of that. I think when the superintendent started hearing that several of his board members, including me, didn't have internet, he thought maybe he needed to cancel. So we had our own issues with 2 college students and a high school student not having internet. We were lucky enough that they could go with my husband to his office and wear masks in conference rooms, but a lot of people don't have that kind of luxury. And so he decided, I think, with hearing several reports, that it would be better to cancel school and start on Monday when most people would have internet access and also electricity restored to their homes. And so we started this past Monday. That did make some parents angry at the last minute cancellation, but I think it was the right choice because we wanted as many students as possible to have access to the first day of school. So we started this past Monday. We're talking about how to make up those 4 days of school. We'll definitely use the snow day, which is June 6th. We may add another 3 days of school. We may use some of our days that are built into the year as student teacher work days. So we're going to figure that out, and we'll tell people as quickly as we can. We're squeezing out as many days from the school schedule as we can with our days that we've used. Something we learned last night is we have probably around 500 students in the district that may not have access to computers. That's extremely distressing to us. We have been trying to get the computers. The computers are on order and were supposed to be with us. Unfortunately, that's true of pretty much everyone in the country. I did travel back to Massachusetts. I was there 2 weeks ago to help my daughter move in. I felt incredibly safe. It's the first time I've gone anywhere since COVID. We've been isolating very carefully. Massachusetts requires you to have a COVID test before you go. They have very low COVID rates, and I traveled on Delta, which felt incredibly safe to me. But when I got there, I looked for desks for her, and they were sold out of everything because everyone is buying a desk for their student because every student is doing remote school from home. And the same is true from computers. Everyone is buying computers for their students because every student is doing, and every school district is buying computers because everyone is doing school from home. And so it's just very hard to get computers. So our 6,000 computer order is delayed and is trickling in. So that's very, very upsetting to us. We're trying to get those computers as quickly as possible. Something else has been very surprising to us. We have 20,300 students registered, and we had 19,000 devices. So that means almost everyone has taken a device. That was surprising to me. We didn't take a device for my daughter. She has an old Apple computer that she's using. I would have thought that at least 1,000 plus students would have had access to computers, but it looks like most people did take a device. One person did explain to me that it was better for her children to have devices from the district because they didn't have the games on them that they have on their personal computers, and that it would be less distracting. And that was a little surprising to me, but I don't want anyone not to have a device that needs one. And if you need one because your daughter or your child would not have games on it, then I want them to have their computers. But it was a little surprising to us, and we are going to get those devices in. And I know that Representative Daley Provost did donate a computer that her family had. So that's one more that one student has, and it makes a big difference to that student. So we really appreciate that donation from her. So thank you very much. Besides that, so we're doing a real push to get computers, to get devices to all those students. We should have them in the next week. Also to make sure that students have connectivity, where there's also a real movement. I understand it's gaining ground from people in the Southeast Quadrant to have students back in school. There's nothing that I would like to see more. I think that's very, very important to have students back in school. We still have positivity rates that average in the district of over 10%. Ava told us we have declining rates in the city. They're still not low enough to meet the standards we set. They also are distributed unevenly throughout the city. So zip codes have uneven distribution. And as we know, the Southeast Quadrant does have a fairly low COVID rate. There are other areas in the city that have much higher rates, and we're concerned about those areas. And it seems inequitable to us. And also they are distributed in the ways you would think. Actually, it's not surprising. And so we feel like there really are areas of inequity, and that it will hurt people in ways that you would expect. And that's very concerning to me. It seems really unfair to me that we would put harm on our students that can least afford harm, can least afford to get COVID, and families that are least able to socially distance in their homes. And that it really hurts my heart to think that we would as a city put our families in that kind of a situation. So I really support the idea of remote learning while we need to do it in our city. But like I said, there are a lot of families, particularly families in the Southeast Quadrant, in other words, up in the Highland High School area, that are putting enormous pressure on the school district. In fact, I think there's a campaign going on for us to be back in school. A lot of pressure is going on right now for us to be back in school full time. And I do agree that it's really important for students to be in school. I would like to be there. I think that's really important, but until we can do it safely, I want our teachers, I want our families, I want our students to be safe and to be healthy. We don't know enough about this virus. We don't know enough about what it does to students long-term, what it hurts if they'll have long-term lung damage, long-term kidney damage, long-term brain damage. We don't know enough about what will happen to them. We know that it will kill people if people get it. We know for example, from that, I just saw an article in the New York Times that there were secondary cases from a wedding in Maine. 7 people died from a wedding in Maine that didn't even attend the wedding. So I worry that if we put students back in school, their relatives will die, teachers' relatives will die. And, I don't want to be the means of having people die because we put people back in school. So that's how I feel about it. Please do email me. I'd like to hear your feelings about what we should be doing. I would like to answer you, especially if your constituents. I am getting a lot of email. Sometimes because some people are forwarding my email to news stations, I don't always answer emails that I don't think are from constituents. So please do identify yourself as my constituent, and I will definitely answer your email. I think unless you have questions, that's pretty much what I have to say. And but I would look forward to having you, definitely hearing from you or hearing your opinion. And do you have any questions? Is there anything? I don't see anything beyond Eva's link in the chat. Anyone have any questions?
Okay,
I
again,
love speaking to this community, and I love seeing your faces on Zoom. Thanks. What are you
just
saying,
imagine
David?
what the rest of us looks like. Well, thank you, Catherine. Again,
you.
in the interest of time, I would like to ask anybody who would, has a question of Catherine to enter it in the chat box or send her an email. We'll go back to Jen Daly Provo.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I know that the time flies when we're having fun, and I just want to first send out a thanks to everybody who's reported, especially Catherine, who is balancing a lot right now with COVID has really made her job as a school board member difficult. It's made everybody's life, everybody's jobs difficult, but thank you. As a public health professional, I am really grateful to Salt Lake City School District for really prioritizing public health. I know that having kids home, it's an impossible decision, sending people back to school during COVID versus making kids stay home. And there's no right answer, there's no easy answer, but I truly believe that you're saving lives and really looking out for our teachers. So thank you. And also, importantly, thank you for setting data-driven benchmarks and sticking with them, because we've seen a lot of precedent in our state where leaders are setting benchmarks, and then when we can't reach them, they're lowering the bar. And I think that that's putting people's health at risk, as evidenced by the rising infection rates that we're seeing in our state right now. I could opine about public health for a long time, but I will save you the intro to my PhD dissertation for now. Really quickly, we had interim session up at the Capitol yesterday and today. I am grateful to be able to say that it is an interim that's been more like a normal interim, where we're hearing bills and doing business as usual, and not dealing, sorry, kid noise, not dealing with a lot of unprecedented, really alarming big things that have to do with COVID. I mean, obviously that's still an issue, and we'll still grapple with that for a long time. But my natural resources committee, natural resources environment, dealt with a lot of issues regarding public lands and protected species, which is business as usual. Same with public health, or health and human services. We did spend a lot of time talking about telehealth, which has been really critical through the pandemic, as far as ensuring that people have access to healthcare during a time when it's hard to be in the hospital or a doctor's office. I did talk about COVID a little bit. We're still grappling with some really big budget crises with decreased revenues. It is true that Utah is faring better than any other state in the nation, but that doesn't mean that we should sit back and take a victory lap. We still have a lot of people that are really hurting, people who are on the cusp of becoming homeless or have already lost their homes. And I know employment is still precarious. Our unemployment fund, while before the pandemic was very healthy and in great shape, is at severe risk of being completely depleted before too long. So we unfortunately, budget-wise and human-wise, we have a lot of work to do to protect people and try to keep people safe in the coming months and years. I do have a lot of anxiety about what's coming with, I'm not even going to call it the second wave of COVID, because we're not even out of the first wave right now. So again, like Catherine said, please do everything you can to protect yourselves, to protect others. Wear your mask, distance whenever you can. And even when you think you can't, please try. I can't stress the importance of that enough. General session is coming up in January. We're already 5 months into opening bills. A couple of highlights that I will touch on that I'm working on. I've got 2 criminal justice bills, one that deals with the criminal code and another that deals with lethal force for the police, for law enforcement. I do have a bill that I'm bringing back this year that would have been great if we'd passed last year, because it would have hopefully addressed some of the fallout with regard to COVID. It's a digital equity bill to make sure that we expand digital high-speed broadband, high-speed internet access to marginalized communities, to a lot of our communities who still just don't have access. And, you know, and everybody here knows, as we're all online just to participate in this meeting, you cannot participate meaningfully in our economy if you don't have internet access. And so we need to make sure that that is a resource that's available to absolutely everyone. And this has been thrown into pretty harsh relief with regard to COVID, an unemployment insurance bill, and contraception for inmates in the state of Utah, so that we can improve reproductive health for another marginalized community. Elections coming up in November. I'm sure you already know that. There's a lot to unpack there, but do be aware that there are a lot of constitutional amendments, not the least of which the question as to whether or not we're going to remove the earmark for the income tax for education. So I don't want to get into the weeds on that. I think that we could probably set up a really long community council meeting around maybe the ballot initiatives and the constitutional amendments. I'm sorry, not ballot initiatives, constitutional amendments coming up in November. Or maybe as a council, we can set something up offline to go through the details on that, because there's a lot of important information. My last thing, Catherine did mention the computers with the school districts, and it is really distressing. She did out me. She wasn't supposed to tell about the computer thing, but if you are able, you can actually get a Chromebook online for a couple $100. And if you have the means, and it is absolutely okay if you don't, but if you do, it is possible to order a computer and maybe donate it to the district. It really would make a huge, phenomenally huge difference in the life of a child whose family just doesn't have the means to provide that. And if you donate it, they can find a kid who needs it, who can keep it, and then they won't depend on the school machines that do come their way. So it's a suggestion. It's an idea that I had. My family and I were able to do that, and it was just a really easy way to make a teeny tiny difference in a really tough time. So with that, questions please in the comments, and I'll also post my contact information in case any of you don't have those. And I forgot to mention, my name's Jennifer Daly Provo. It's an honor to represent you in House District 24.
Thank you, Jen. Again, in the interest of time, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat box. Okay, we're going to now hear from Nancy Monteith, who's with Salt Lake City Public Lands, and she is going to tell us about the Salt Lake City Public Lands Master Plan.
Yes, thanks for having me. I wanted to take just a few minutes to introduce this project. We're really excited to be working on this right now, and we can't think of a better time. With all the challenges that we're faced with, we're also looking at things new, and I think it's an opportunity to really look at our public spaces and parks and trails and natural lands and see how they add to our quality of life in the city. I have the project is about an 18-month process, and we are about 4 months into that. I have a very short presentation to give you a little bit of a flavor of it, and then I have some time for questions. So can I share my screen?
I think you should be able to. Go ahead.
Okay. It's, let's see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me,
I think
I'll tell you what, Nancy, for the time being, I'll make you the host, and then it won't be a problem. You have to remember to send that back to me.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. So as I said, we're starting our comprehensive master plan. It's an opportunity to really think on a big scale, holistic, and look at all the aspects of our parks, trails, urban forest, and natural lands. And typically, a master plan is done, every 10 to 20 years, it has a 20-year planning horizon with the idea that it's updated every 10 years. We did an open space master plan in 1992, and then we did a parks recovery action plan in 2001. So we're overdue. And so we're calling our project Reimagine Nature. And we're working with a consultant design workshop on this citywide plan. So you can find more information, more in-depth presentation online, and all of the information I'm sharing here in greater depth on our project website. Our public lands is really a collection of the 3 divisions, which is trails and natural lands, city parks, and the urban forest. Our planning effort will use comprehensive evidence-based analysis coupled with community engagement to prioritize and identify transformative projects for the city's public lands. The first step of this project was really the comprehensive needs assessment. So last April, we completed the study that really looked at the existing conditions of our natural lands. And the study helped identify our needs, opportunities, and challenges. And as the city is growing and acquiring land, is becoming more and more challenging. So what it did is it measured the quantity and quality of existing parks and natural lands, and included a public survey. So the outcome of this, really, I started to identify the gaps in our existing system. So gaps in terms of, what condition our assets are in, how many people or what areas of the city are more than a half mile from walking distance from a park. And then trail connections, where are the trail connections and where are the gaps? So this is the foundational study for our project. And our consultant took that information and developed this kind of snapshot. And this kind of outlines, this map represents our existing system, and it includes Trails and Natural Lands has over 70 miles of existing trails and 129 miles of proposed trails. And those are indicated on the dashed lines. The Natural Lands Division also provides almost 1,700 acres of natural lands, and they've just created a foothills natural area, which is a collaborative management zone indicated through the red color. And that is almost 6,500 acres, so along those foothills, and that was done in conjunction with the Foothills Master Plan. Our parks, we have 735 acres of manicured parks, and those are in teal blue. And we have 42 mini parks, 19 neighborhood parks, 15 community parks. So Warm Springs is considered a community park because of its size and the variety of assets. We also have 2 regional parks, the Regional Athletic Complex of over 16 outdoor fields, 3 special event parks, and we have a 121-acre city cemetery. So this master plan will look for synergies between these public lands and other city-owned green spaces, including golf. And then urban forestry, our urban canopy is represented by the olive green, and we don't have a total count on the trees lost, but we have over 85,000 trees currently. So why would we do a master plan? I think one of the things that COVID has really shown us is that now more than ever, people are really utilizing their parks, trails, and natural lands because it's a safe place to be outside. And it's a place to gather with friends in the community. As we found with the needs assessment, this project, it's an opportunity to address the essential elements also for better air quality, climate change mitigation, energy efficiency, and environmental justice. We'll be identifying through this process, and we're in the middle of the public engagement window #1. So I hope you've seen some of our signs and some of the advertisements for getting on to take our public survey. But we're really organizing this plan out of 3 core values of stewardship, livability, and equity. And these values will help frame the future. So those 3 values, I think, also will be further defined by the community. I mean, equity is a challenging thing, and for each community, has a different kind of meaning or definition, or it is realized through different means. And so with equity, it really begins with listening and including diverse voices in the master plan process and priorities. And this aligns with the citywide value emerging from the roundtable discussion that happened recently on geographic equity, inclusion, and belonging. And while the needs assessment identified gaps and barriers in public lands, we are committed to listening to the realities and perceptions of access to public lands from all sides of Salt Lake City. And one of the things that we've done is we are in the process of reaching out to over 200 community groups to also dig deeper into people who are working with community members and identifying potential partnerships. The next value is livability. And I think the other kind of big takeaway from the needs assessment is, which also looked at our projected growth. And I think it was a fairly conservative estimate, with some people saying we're going to reach it much sooner than 2040, but we're estimating that over 30,000 more people are anticipated to move to Salt Lake City. So what that means, if we don't add new park space, then we have more people in all the spaces that we currently have, and that really results in less access for each individual. So as the city grows, and park, that's the role of park impact fees, is that you can add to the system to meet the demands of new growth and new population. And so we'll be thinking a lot about how do we meet the needs of today, and how do we plan for the future? So how can we collectively identify out of the box opportunities to use our city parks, golf courses, and natural areas and streetscapes to increase public access to nature, trails, sports fields, and public gathering spaces? The third value of stewardship is something we heard quite a bit also in our comprehensive needs assessment, that it was really important. We had a statistically valid survey, which was essentially randomly selected addresses that we sent out 10,000 invitations, and we set a number for response rate in each area of the city, so we would have that geographic representation and inclusion. And one of the things we heard from existing residents is that they did feel we had enough parks and natural lands, but they felt like we should be investing in our existing facilities. So there is this combination between, making sure we protect what we have, but also realizing that as we grow, we need to add to maintain that same access. And stewardship also inspires us to preserve habitats so plants and wildlife can thrive and be resilient. And as global trends in biodiversity intersect with local trends, including a decline in the number of urban trees over the last 20 years, stewardship expands local and global efforts that can help mitigate big issues like poor air quality. So how can you be involved? We are in the middle of our first 6-week community engagement window, and that is really discover, so that foundation of understanding. So we're sharing information that has been gleaned from previous planning studies and our needs assessment, and we're soliciting initial input from the community. So we're reflecting back what we learned from the public lands needs assessment, and then asking a little bit deeper questions. So that survey is active and it will be open until October 7th. And an ask I have for the leadership of the community council is to share information from this project on your social media channels and encourage your residents and constituents to respond to that. One of the things we would really like during this window is to cast as wide a net as possible to get that initial input, and then have those emails so we can reach out to people throughout the entire process and solicit feedback. So the second, what we'll be doing is we'll collect that input, we'll be responding to it, and then reaching out with stakeholders and refining or going a little bit deeper in the ideas, framing some of the projects. The plan will be organized around 10 transformational projects. We wanted something very tangible and not necessarily a plan around strategies and actions, but something that could be really people get excited about. So the second engagement window will be focused on sharing those big ideas with the community and getting input on that. And then the third window will be that final community engagement window, and it'll be focused around the plan adoption process. So there'll be 3 times for the public to engage, and we really hope to get a robust input. And I think that the best plans are the ones that really come from the ground up and really represent the desires from the community. And so we have a website, reimaginenature.saltlakecity.com, and you can get on there. There's a longer presentation. You can get in to more in depth. There's that snapshot, and then our kind of key statistics that we want to share. And then there's also an option, there's a tab at the top called Reimagine, and I invite you to get on there. You can provide your big idea there, and we will post it on the website. And I think that gives a nice way to start a public dialogue. I think so much of the engagement is not only collecting input, but being able to see what other people are also thinking about. So that, let's see, I think that I can relinquish the screen and see if I'm able to do that. I kind of moved things around a little bit, and while I'm trying to figure out this, let's see, agree. Okay. Are there any questions or comments, things that we should be mindful of?
I have a question.
Yes.
I just private messaged you, but of course you couldn't read it because you were talking, which I respect. But I had a problem going to that website. Could you put the website in the chat?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
I lost the, let's see, okay. You know, I moved things around so I could look at my notes, and I can't find the controls back, but I will, it is reimaginenature.slc.com. Did it
Nancy,
not come up for you?
Yeah.
Nancy, do you see the things that stop sharing?
I just lost the controls on mine somehow.
Oh, you know,
I'm sorry.
I may be personally responsible for that. Oh dear, yeah, it's so many things. Oh,
there it is.
Oh, now
I'm
I see
fighting
nothing.
with you right now.
Now there's nothing.
I think you're on my screen.
Yes, I am. I'm going to stop doing that. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
I think you're back in control. Can you stop sharing your screen now?
Yes.
Ah,
okay,
beautiful.
now I have
control.
control.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions for Nancy? I want to underscore how important this master plan is. Public lands and open space are an enormous part of what makes living in Salt Lake City so great. And this is an opportunity for us all to have some input on how they evolve over the next 20 years. You only get that kind of opportunity every 20 years. So I'll work with Nancy to make sure that the material that she has is accessible through our website as well as through theirs. And we will send around some emails actively soliciting your input on these things. And again, I think that this is a very important opportunity for us to have a voice in the future of our city.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that I think makes such a big difference is if as an individual you post the website on your own media, social media and you ask your friends and colleagues to respond, I think that gets a lot of attention. And we are also doing over 20 pop-up events so that we can reach people who aren't necessarily engaged with our usual channels. We created a sort of a bike trailer with information, and someone's going to be riding up and down our linear spaces to solicit input. And we're looking for all ways. It's a little bit challenging now with COVID, so we're really asking for your help in getting this out as far and wide as we can. So
Okay,
thank
well,
you for your
our
time.
council will definitely do what we can.
Okay, thanks for your time.
I'm going to ask people to hold their questions and address them to Nancy through the chat box, or perhaps she will put her email up there so you can write to her.
I can do that.
I'm going to give Brian Hutchinson about 5 minutes to bring you all up to speed on what is going on with our extensive efforts in the domain of traffic and transportation.
Thank you, David. Suppose you can give me the screen sharing capability.
Okay. Gee, I wish I knew how to do that besides
The host, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've disabled my own screen sharing.
Oh.
Which is very counterproductive. But I don't know that I know how to fix it.
Oh, this happened at the last meeting too.
Hang on. Oh boy, you think after all these months we would understand this silly application here.
I'm still using my old computer.
Yeah. Well, I don't even see now how, oh, wait a second, oh, I see it. No, I don't even see how to make you the host anymore. Sorry. I guess you'll just have to talk us through it. I know that's not nearly as effective as seeing the maps and so forth, but
Pictures,
I just can't figure this out right now.
Okay, yeah, so I guess we'll just imagine. I prepared this awesome picture. Just took me about 3 minutes of waiting, and I saw a line of 6 trucks heading east on 6th North between 4th West and 3rd West. And guess what? They didn't all make it through the light. It took over 4 minutes to go the long way. But this is one of the ideas that we've been working on with UDOT and also with Staker Parson and Salt Lake Transportation to just avoid all of this mess, so that give people relief who have 120-year-old residents along this section, but also the relief along 3rd West between 6th North and 10th North. And you know, I'd like to talk to Nancy. I sent her a message about how loud and dangerous it is as trucks travel past Warm Springs Park. It just destroys the entire atmosphere. But that's just one of the items we're working on. Where we have here. Imagine a picture of 4th North and Columbus Street. The signal light there is scheduled to be completed at the beginning of October. And I've been exchanging communications with the regional director for UDOT, and they're very much planning to put traffic cut-through mitigation signage that we've been talking about for quite some time to accompany this light, so that people aren't just going to peel off and rip through the neighborhood. This is let me just see traffic. Let's see. Detective Gibic, I appreciate him contacting the Capitol. We had a meeting up at the Capitol with UHP and Salt Lake Transportation and 10 prominent people in the neighborhood at the Capitol building to bring attention to the issues around the motorcycles and modified muffler vehicles that hound the adjoining neighborhoods throughout the nights on Friday, Saturday nights for sure, but also early in the morning. And it's interesting. It was fascinating to hear the police say that they didn't know about the problem, you know, or didn't understand the extent of the problem. And so, but that was just the first step of the education process that we're working on. I guess, what other things? Okay, so for Salt Lake Transportation Division, we've been working on a checklist, or going to present some pilot projects to the council here. And all the neighborhood is, we have several groups that want to take part in tactical urbanism in the form of street painting and other projects. There's some other cut-through traffic mitigation efforts that the Transportation Division would like to test, and which include partial closures on certain blocks, temporary, just to see how it affects traffic in the adjoining blocks. And also they have they're working with a company that has a urethane speed table, which is like a speed bump, but it's actually a speed hump. And so we're probably going to place that in a couple places around the neighborhood to see how it affects traffic. And let's see, do I have 2 more minutes? Yeah, I guess, we said this in our committee meeting. We're working closer with the industry, with Staker Parson. Their engineers are very interested in improving efficiency. And that photo that I didn't show you, it will be very helpful. It's just wasting energy, time, adding emissions, and wreaking safety hazard on the neighborhood. There's also a concentration on a few intersections on the lower part on 3rd West 6 North and 4th West 6 North and 10th North, or where 4th West intersects Beck Street. Just some safety ideas that are going to be that are being studied. UDOT has 2 safety studies, one on Victory Road. By the way, I was going to tell Detective Divick, or ask him about the racing that's going on Victory Road, which also is happening throughout the neighborhood and adjoining neighborhoods. It's not just us. And I think, those are my photos. That's my PowerPoint presentation. Any questions?
Thanks, Brian. I think I finally figured it out, but now, of course, it's too late.
Oh, it's okay.
But just for future reference, see if you can share your screen.
Okay, yeah, let me just a second here. Okay, share my screen. Okay, share screen.
At the bottom, is there a green square?
It says
that
host
share
disabled
screen?
attendee.
Oh,
Screen sharing.
well, all right, we'll figure it out later. Sorry about that.
Maybe 3rd time we'll be lucky.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody
Again,
has any interest? Follow the website. The committees are. Anna's been really working hard in making more robust site where we have the committee projects and topics you'll be able to track, and so you traffic related issues. You'll be able to go to the website and just click in under search and find the latest on that issue. Okay.
Okay.
All right,
okay. We're going to move on now to Jared Hall, who's going to talk to us about his project on Almond Street. And it's absolutely critical that I let you share your screen, right? So the only way I know how to do that right now, Jared, is to make you the host.
Okay.
And then you should be able to share your screen through the little green share screen deal at the bottom.
Something like that, I believe.
That's it, man.
Okay, so Matt Strong is also on here somewhere, and Matt is the property owner of these, and my name's Jared, and I'm the architect on them. So Matt has been around Salt Lake City in real estate for a long time. And
I'm not talking to anybody. Dad's having his community council meeting. And
sorry. Well,
gonna watch it. You're a community council member. Well, not really. You could be. Boring, exactly. Really boring.
I'm sorry.
At least it's not a toilet flush.
Bouncing around. I don't know. I couldn't
So
have
I'm the architect on the project.
Are you just
The
excited?
owner developed design. I've lived in District 3 for 12 years now.
You were here. Quiet.
And I live just outside the Capitol Hill community boundaries, but still in District 3. And I've attended your guys' meeting a fair amount, and also I attend the Fair Park Community Council a lot. And I'm pretty active in doing projects in our general neighborhood. So a little bit of background as to kind of why we do what we do. Like, one, Salt Lake City has a super housing shortage, and I think we're all relatively aware of that. And part of that is within Salt Lake City, according to Nick Norris, the planning director, only 21% of the land in the city even allows housing to be built. And only 6% of the land in the city allows multifamily to be built. And so just because of that, Salt Lake City has a hard time building enough housing for the number of people who want to live here. That in Salt Lake City is not unique in these sort of percentages. It's all across the West is similar, and it's caused really bad housing increases over the past couple of decades. So, and the reason we're here talking to you guys tonight is because this is in the historic district, and we need part of the design guidelines of that Salt Lake City has set up is responding to the context of the neighborhoods. And while Matt and I can kind of hang out there some and drive around, like, we don't get to know context like the people who live there every day. And so we want to kind of understand from you guys what the important contextual things you see around there and what's not. And so as part of the design guidelines, like this 78-page book that Salt Lake City's made for us to follow, the things they talk about we have to follow, the guidelines to be a good historic partner with a new building are things like the way buildings address the street and having people relative to the street and matching features of other things. Some of the things that they say are not part of the historic compatibility are making new buildings indistinguishable from old buildings, actually encourage new buildings to kind of look like new buildings. And another thing is, like, it's not part of the historic context to protect views from adjacent properties. So one of the things we start out with is we kind of do a survey of the adjacent properties, kind of try and understand some of the context of what's going on. In so many Victorian era houses, which are kind of all throughout the Capitol Hill area and Marmalade, like, they have really heavy texture on them and different geometric patterns. And often those patterns, especially historically, were quite brightly painted and colored. We notice a lot of front porches out there. One of the things we noticed on a lot of the historic windows were these sort of tripartite windows that are kind of 3 and then 3 up above. And so another thing we look at as we're looking at this area is the height of the buildings around. So of all of the buildings of Almond Street, the average height is about 42 feet, which seems about right when you're there. There's some that are shorter and some that are obviously much taller than that. So in the city guidelines, one of the things they sort of guide us towards as in designing historic is the Capitol Theater extension, where they use the same sort of parapet and cantilevered overhang at the top, the same texture of the diamond patterns. And we've tried to use some of those same things as we're starting to put together an outside design for our project. So for those of you who don't know the site, this is 2nd North right at the bottom of the page and 3rd North at the top. And Almond Street runs here. There's an old LDS church right there, and then the Trevi Towers and Zion Summit kind of around the corner. And so what we're proposing there is 4 townhome style units that each one has a 2-car tandem parking garage entering off of Almond Street. They're 21-foot wide units. We're making some space for some greenery out on the front of everyone. We have porches on the ground level, as well as on the lower level we have porch, and then on the top level we have a porch on the front and the back to try and help create as much connection between the people in the building and the streets as we can. So this is kind of a general direction we're heading with how the building's going to look. We have kind of fiber cement panels in the sort of texture that we've seen throughout the neighborhood, but kind of enlarged in scale and doing a varied paint job, kind of similar to what we've seen a lot. This image kind of shows the trees, but makes it so you can't see the building as well. This is without those trees, but you can see the building, using a fair amount of brick on the facade, and then wood to kind of show where the entry piece is. Similar garage doors to the project just to the north of us. That's the old Garbutt homes. Would be kind of translucent overhead door. Oh. This is kind of looking down the street. Our project sits taller than these most recently constructed single story, but kind of fits in with the context of a lot of the other stuff that is going on there. This is a view kind of from back over top of that church, looking back, showing how we are fitting into the neighborhood. And then kind of one more further back. And then this is a section showing kind of the Trevi Towers across from us. This 45-foot line there is the limit of height set by the zoning of this parcel. And then we're kind of floating on top of it. We looked at a few different options. One of which would be kind of what they did next to us, is do a single level off Almond and then dig down. But that caused, we're worried that's going to cause some undermining issues of adjacent parcels. Like I know I had heard from reading city reports that there was worry from people across the street that digging down so far on those other projects was going to cause structural damages with our homes. So we're sort of more lightly setting on top of the hill as it goes down its natural grade, and then building our unit up above that. So that's kind of my presentation, and then would be open to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay, Jared, can you find my name on the participants panel and make me the host again? You right click on my name.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You
should be the
okay,
host
yes,
now.
that did it. Thank you very much. We're going to continue to view your screen, but I wanted to be able to sort of moderate the discussion. If anybody wants to ask Jared a question, please remember to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Jared, this is John Mitchell, the co-chair of the neighborhood committee. Are you reading me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. The first thing I notice about your project is the coloring. And I like the coloring, but I don't see it relating to any coloring in the neighborhood. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, so one of the things we've done, and we didn't show it a lot in this presentation, is a lot of the current paint styles of the neighborhood actually reflect a lot more current paint styles than they do the historic paint styles of when those houses were built. Historically, a lot of these Victorian era houses were very brightly colored. And so we wanted to do something that kind of harkened back to those bright colors of historical Victorian style.
Okay, okay. And in terms of the style, your style is, it appears as if the four condos are kind of encased within a frame almost. Yes, there you go.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering, they look I'm not finding the right wording, but they look maybe a little excessively private. They're not opening up to the rest of the neighborhood? Could you, if you understand that question, could you comment on it?
Yeah, I understand it a little bit. So, I mean, part of what we've got going on here is like, this is intended to be a porch here, and then you have this larger covered porch that is directly off the kitchen dining space that I think helps create those neighborhood connections that you're talking about. It's not kind of the way a porch is traditionally done on an older home, but we feel
Yes.
we're trying to provide as many porches as we can in a more contemporary aesthetic.
Okay. Is the lots, are there empty lots to the north and south of your building, or that will be filled in with other new projects? For example,
No.
the empty space to the north that we're looking at right now, will that just remain an empty space?
So, yeah, so that's, we're 8 feet from our property line, and then you can just barely see the corner of what the adjacent building is, which is 8 feet from its property line.
Okay.
And it's just that 16 feet difference. So we're taking that whole area that's empty, we're occupying, and then on the lower side of our property, we're leaving a fair amount of just open space.
I have a question. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what's the parking situation going to be? And how big are the units size-wise, square footage? I mean, I see that there's a garage. Is it a single, double, and then what kind of street parking are impact? Obviously, where it's a 4-unit, it's a lot less than some of these big high-rise ones.
Yeah, so our garage is a tandem garage. So you get 2 cars in there, one parked behind the other, in an effort to kind of reduce that garage door size so that, I mean, for better or worse, the project just to the north of us feels like it's all garage doors and very little doors, which we feel kind of makes a lot less good street engagement versus narrowing up that. And then our building is set back far enough from the property line that you have kind of one guest spot that would be able to park there and not impede the sidewalk. And then the units are 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath. They're about 2,200 square feet each.
What are these are going to be not renting their owner, right?
Correct.
Occupied.
That's the intent.
What price range are they going to be starting at?
We're not sure yet. We kind of have to figure out a few more things, but probably in the $800,000 range.
Okay, thank you.
I have a comment or 5.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Jared, first off, I think they're really cool. I really like them. I like the color. I think they're, yeah, I think they're sharp. But when you said, one thing when you first came out and you said there's a shortage of housing, personally, I think that's BS. I think there's plenty of housing. There's so many buildings going up. There's a shortage of affordable housing. I mean, that's 800,000. That's like each of those units. And I live like a 2-minute walk from there. And those are, I'm just going to say, a lot more expensive than our house. So, yeah, whatever. I don't think that they fit with the neighborhood, which, you know, usually doesn't bother me. But yeah, I don't think they, like, seeing the pictures, and maybe they were like highlighted a little bit, but they don't look like it doesn't look like there was a lot or any effort into actually fitting them with the neighborhood. And the comment about the color, while I thoroughly appreciate it, and I really like vibrant, I think it would be fun to have all different colors. 2 buildings like right around the corner just had to repaint the whole building because they had changed it from brick to, they painted the bricks white, which are not fancy colors. And those apartment buildings had to redo the colors. So I'm wondering if you're aware of that, and if you've, I mean, those people, those the people that owned those apartment buildings went through the expense of painting their apartment buildings white, and then had to redo it and pay a fine. So maybe you're already aware of that. But if I was a neighbor, my biggest pet peeve would be whose view you'd be blocking across the street. So those are all my points. Is that and then plus, yeah, I mean, I think they're super cool, but no, I don't think they fit the neighborhood, and I'm just worried for you that you're going to get into a lot of trouble with them. I do appreciate that on the sides of the building you don't have any windows, so I'm guessing that whoever you're working with, their plan is to like squeeze in more buildings right next to it eventually. But yeah, anyway, that's it.
Okay, first, the buildings down the hill that did have to repaint, I'm aware of those, and they had to do that because they didn't do this sort of process. Like, they have a historic building, and in a historic district, you can't just paint the historic building, and so that's why they had to take the paint off. There's not necessarily a requirement when you're building new saying it has to be this color, it has to be that color. It just, that's the situation with those. Yeah, so there's not, unless the city changes the zoning dramatically, which I can't imagine happening, there's just not room for more units on the north and south here. We're kind of building out to the zone setbacks as it is. So I can't imagine seeing another unit going in there. Yeah, like as far as blending into the neighborhood, we've tried to do things that will help this be a good neighbor without necessarily looking exactly like all the other neighbors. So
there you go. I have another question if somebody else is. So I guess this doesn't actually pertain to you, but kind of. I just question, why do we even have a historical, that's what I call it, sorry, history, historical community with all these requirements and restrictions for those of us that have existing homes. And it just seems weird that new homes could come in and do anything. And to me, it really changes. I mean, that's just me, but that doesn't really apply to you because you don't make the rules. Just me spitting off.
And it's not like we can do anything. There's a 78-page guidebook kind of explaining all the rules for new construction and what we can do and can't do.
Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so you says the average. You mean like the average? Is it the median average, the mean, the mode? What kind of average?
So we did the average per linear foot of building.
So I guess my question actually pertains to height. What you should do is get rid of the extremes, like the Trevi Towers, when you're figuring out average. My neighbor who just built a new house was restricted to 22 feet because of the height limit. Now you have a different zoning perhaps. I think one of the concerns people have is if it's going to be so big and obtrusive and blocking people's view, then maybe you could fit more apartments in this volume. And they wouldn't be $800,000 units, they'd be $400,000 units. And but the fact that you can get away with it doesn't mean that you should block the view of the people behind you. You know, that's a bit concerning to me, and especially in a historic neighborhood that Barbara mentioned. We don't set the rules. Landmarks has gotten rid of a lot of the rules, and they got rid of the people who actually know about historic architecture and how things fit within a historic context. So that's not your fault, but I'm guessing that this is very 2015, 2020, you know, very, very now. It's I don't know how many friends you have due to this design.
Okay.
Mint Brandon here. Could you explain the retainer wall again? As if you notice, if you go up Center Street or Second West, some of those retainer walls that was put in for a purpose, now all it causes is heartache. Someone has to repair them, and a homeowner or what?
Yeah, so I was talking about that. The way we designed this is that the building sort of steps down the way the site naturally is graded, so we don't have a big retaining wall. We just kind of set the building on the pretty close to natural grade that's there. Does that make sense?
Okay, we're approaching the end of our allotted time for the meeting. I want to thank you very much for, I want everybody to know that Jared approached the council voluntarily, and we've been actually trying to get him scheduled here for a couple months. And I apologize for the delay, but I think it's, I want to thank Jared and his client for being open to input from our community and not doing it at the point of a gun, but doing it voluntarily. And I appreciate that very much. I would like to say, Jarrett, that I think that the point where you may run afoul of the historic preservation guidelines is when they talk about scale, which as an architect you understand is a different story than actual size. Those large paneled walls that you've got there have no subdivisions, and they do not respect scale. They are enormous, monolithic, massive elements that I dare you to find precedents for anywhere in Marmalade. I would encourage you to rethink those things. They're not necessarily structurally, they're not really, I understand it's a look. As an architect, I sympathize fully, but I think that there you have misinterpreted the intention of the Historic District Guidelines.
Okay.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. I hope everybody is staying safe and well. We are in the process of revamping our website, and hopefully very soon we will be relaunching it, and it will be much easier to find the kind of information that you all care about relating to new construction and development, relating to our efforts to address some of the traffic problems that we have around here. And check with us, check back on the website in about a week, and we hope to have something cool to show you. So I think I'm supposed to ask actually if there's a motion to adjourn. Brian, thank you. Is there a second?
Minta.
Okay, thank you, Minta. Is there any discussion? Does anybody really want to hang around here for another 10 minutes?
No, one thing we forgot to do was approve the minutes, David.
Yes, we did. And Dan, you're on the call. Did you have a chance to prepare minutes from last meeting?
We did not. I lost my roof completely, and along with it went my satellite dish.
Oh, man.
Thanks to the Arctic blast. The only thing I was going to add, just on a civic issue, I spoke to emergency management, state, city, and county. And if you know anyone, if this is addressed to the community at large here, you know anyone that had a loss of any type, including cleanup, that wasn't covered with insurance, they should go to the city and county websites and post those amounts. The city has a $3.9 million threshold to get assistance from FEMA. If we don't meet that, we don't get any money from the Feddies. If we meet the 3.9, we get the federales to help us as a city.
That's very, very good to know.
Yes, and I don't have any minutes, but I'll put them together.
Well, but thank you for bringing that up, Barb, and we will read them and approve them at our next meeting. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? Okay. Thanks again. The meeting is adjourned. See you soon.